Actor John Hurt, who played Winston Smith in the film version of 1984, died this past week. We're all Winston Smith now.
You don't have to be poor anymore. Jesus is here.
The loudspeaker spoke up and said, Christianity is stupid.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude, not far from the redneck Mecca, and points west. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is curled up asleep somewhere. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cat, and a gal and her dog. Get over it. America is back with us this week, along with her new dog, America's Random Adventures, called Adventure for short. America and I gabbed for about 4 hours while recording this, so it's going to be a bit longer than usual, and Patreon subscribers will get to hear a lot of what we talked about, which didn't make it into this episode. Speaking of which, the show's got a new Patreon supporter, Jan. Thanks very much for your support. You folks keep this up, and I might actually make real money from this thing. Then I could afford to get a car and get out of this dump of a trailer park. And I do want to thank everyone again who supported the show via Patreon or direct donations over the years. You've kept me from being homeless and enabled me to at least do a few things to make my life better. The show doesn't have the volume of listeners that a lot of other atheist podcasts do, but it does have a higher percentage of people who support the show than most of the big atheist podcasts, which really says a lot about the folks who listen. The standard ratio of podcast supporters to listeners, regardless of the genre, is that out of 1,000 people who listen to your show, you can expect one of them to support you via Patreon or whatever. As of right now, there's only been one episode that's cracked the 500 download mark. So the fact that this show has any supporters at all is nothing short of remarkable. Again, thank all of you for your support. Again, thank you all for your help. A few more things before we get to America and I reading the news. The first is that I need to apologize to Patreon supporter Xenu. I said that anyone who supported the podcast at above the $10 a month level would get a link so they could watch the show being recorded via Google Hangouts once a month, and I didn't do that this month. I forgot about that until yesterday and would have sent you the link when America and I were going to record, but we spent like half an hour doing nothing but just trying to get Skype to work. So I wasn't going to risk doing the Google Hangouts as well. Next month, I'll get a link for you for one of the sessions. I apologize, but I think you can understand. I'm also still looking for title suggestions for my other podcast, which is going to be focusing on Eric Hoffer's book, The True Believer, at least in the beginning. The best I've been able to come up with on my own is the Book Club of the Resistance, and that just strikes me as a bit too wordy and pretentious. In future episodes, I'm going to be restructuring the show slightly so that America's here in the beginning rather than just me, but I haven't worked out all the details yet, as one of the things we've got to come up with is a catchy kind of intro which matches the current one, but mentions America. When I started the show, I actually never thought that anyone would want to be a co-host with me, so I've sort of built the thing around it just being me and Fuzznuts. With America joining on, I have to rethink all of that, and I'm trying to split things up so she can have as much input into things as she wants. She's now an admin of the show's Facebook page, and a lot of the posts you've seen there recently have been ones that she's done. I cannot thank her enough for what she's done for the show, and I hope even on the episodes where she can't join in, you'll still continue to listen. With all that out of the way, let's get to the news.
Have I helped your unbelief?
Oh, yes. Yes, I believe. I believe in death. I believe in disease. I believe in injustice and inhumanity and torture and anger and hate. I believe in murder. I believe in pain. I believe in cruelty and infidelity. I believe in slime and stink and in every crawling, putrid thing, every possible ugliness and corruption, you son of a bitch! I believe! In you.
Pakistan bans famed religious TV host for hurling blasphemy allegations. Pakistan's television regulator on Thursday banned a well-known talk show host for hate speech after he hosted shows accusing liberal activists and others of blasphemy, an inflammatory allegation that could put their lives at risk. Blasphemy in Pakistan is a criminal offense in the Muslim majority country. That can result in the death penalty. Even being accused of blasphemy can provoke targeted attacks of violence by religious right-wing vigilantes. I am going to attempt this man's name. Amir Laikwant Hussain, who described his program aired on Bowl TV as the country's leading television show, had been at the forefront of a campaign to discredit liberal activists who went missing this month, as well as those defending them. In a document sent to Bowl TV and seen by Reuters, the Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority said the show willfully and repeatedly made statements and allegations which are tantamount to hate speech, derogatory remarks, incitement of violence against citizens, and casting accusations of being anti-state and anti-Islam. I am actually kind of surprised that they're not pro this.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely not surprised, or I genuinely am surprised that, this man is saying these things, or they're not just going out and getting these people. That shocks me.
Yeah, it is surprising that they fired him for doing this, and it shows the dangers of blasphemy laws that people who say things that, well, any sane person would consider reasonable, like, hey, maybe we should, think that women are kind of like people, end up in jail. It's crazy that they have these laws, and, that you can be executed for violating them, but in reality, the U.S. is not that far away from this shit, considering who we've got as president and vice president right now.
Right. If that shows up on a newspaper Monday, I will not be surprised. It will be very interesting if such a thing happens to see how the atheist podcasting community reacts. Because, of course, there are people that have irregular jobs and can't, we can't lose our jobs. We need to, not all of us are professional podcasters, I should say. Yeah. So it would be very interesting to see what would happen.
Yeah, and I mean, even some of the biggest atheist podcasters use a pseudonym, not merely because it's a clever name, but also because they do have concerns.
Right.
Noah Lugens, he has said on his podcast that is a pseudonym, and he used it, partly because it's clever, but also partly because it makes things easier for him if people who know his real name don't know what else he does. And he is a New Yorker.
Right. And it's, and I went on a drunken Facebook friend moment, which is how I now have all those guys as friends on my Facebook. And I was very shocked that, some people, I'm assuming, use their real name. And even if they don't use their real name, they are friends with other people who, maybe use their real name, and I think do use their real name, and then tag those people in Facebook posts that thousands of us see, but, some of them have public profiles. Yeah. So it's always very interesting to me where that line is, and if blasphemy laws happen, if suddenly there would be 3 atheist podcasts tomorrow, or if there would be 3,000. I don't want blasphemy laws to come into play, but I would be very interested to see how that affects our community.
Yeah, it's back when the atheist podcaster group started. I posed the question: what happens if all of us become threatened, or how willing are we to support one another?
Right.
I didn't get too many answers. Because it's not something people want to think about. Right.
Members of my local satanic temple went to a Planned Parenthood counter protest today in Phoenix, and it was there was a discussion of, if the news shows up and you somehow end up on the news, even if it's for something else, how would that affect your life? And there are some people where they're okay. I am very much not. I actually, kind of need to be careful sometimes because I have a very unique name.
I have been to 2 atheist conventions. I was at ReasonCon in 2014, and I was at the Nashville Atheist Convention, NanoCon, last year. And when I was at ReasonCon, I didn't mind people taking my picture because that's in another state. It's miles away. Even if somebody does see the picture who knows me here, I can, there's plausible deniability.
Right.
But when I went to NanoCon, I wore, they gave out 2 different kinds of badges. One said, I don't care if you take my picture. The other one said, I do care if you take my picture. And I wore the one that said, I do care if you take my picture, because I was worried that my boss at the time would fire me for being at an atheist convention. And since Tennessee is a no rights at work state, a right to work state, they could absolutely fire me for being at an atheist event. My present employer is a devout Catholic, and if he saw me at an atheist event, I have no doubt that he would fire me.
Right.
Because, he is a nutbag religious idiot, and so is the second in command who actually wields more authority. I completely sympathize, and I don't know, there's talk about having local podcasters speak, at the next NanoCon, and I certainly want to do that if I can, because, well, that'll give me more listeners, etc., etc. But at the same time, I also have to worry that I may suddenly become unemployable in this area because of all the people who believe in Jebus.
Right.
All right.
I know, it's really... As much as the Christians love to talk about persecution, there are whole fucking radio stations that are nothing but Jesus 24/7. It would never occur to some people, genuinely occur to some people, that they could lose their job should they come out. Maybe if you were a Catholic in a Mormon area, but for most people, it would never even occur to them, if anyone knew that I believed in God, I would be fired.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know a handful of Mormons, and I don't think they would fire somebody for being Catholic. Atheist, Muslim, certainly. But Catholic, no. And considering the history of Mormonism in the U.S., if anybody should recognize religious persecution, it should be them.
Somebody made that point to me because the Satanic Temple does the After School Satan program, and apparently they didn't meet a lot of resistance in Utah. And someone made the comment, it's probably because the Mormons are so used to being the weird ones, the odd man out, that while they are not pro-Satanic Temple, they at least do realize, hey, we were persecuted once.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they did a lot of persecution themselves, but at the same time, they were occasionally unjustly persecuted just because, Joseph Smith liked to bang lots of women.
Right.
And, I'll be honest, I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to bang lots of women or bang lots of men. That seems kind of natural to me.
Yeah, I am very pro bang all the people as long as there was consent.
Yep.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Asps. Very dangerous. You go first.
Warrior of high status was buried at Scottish Viking site. The excavation of a rare intact Viking boat buried in western Scotland has been set out in detail for the first time. Artifacts buried alongside the Viking in his boat found in... And what the fuck is this word? Ardnamurtran?
I assumed it was Celtic and I wasn't going to try it.
Suggest he was a high-ranking warrior. In a report published by Antiquity, archaeologists described the finds, including a sword, spearhead, and 213 of the boat's rivets. The weapons indicate a burial of a warrior of a high status. Now, one of the things that I find curious about this is the Vikings, for a very long time, when they buried somebody who was like a chief, they would give a human sacrifice. Generally some hot young female, who
always.
Yeah, who was, put on the funeral pyre alive. Well, she was put on the whole setup before it was buried or torched. Usually it was torched and then buried. And she would be alive, and she was married to the asshole. And I can't remember where I read the account, but this is like up into the 900s that they were doing this kind of shit. And the article doesn't seem to indicate any of that happened. It was just, dude died, we put him in his boat and buried him. And the other thing is, lots of people, we think of the Vikings as being, guys that ran around raping and pillaging various places. But that's actually not entirely correct. The Vikings were basically merchants who occasionally raped and pillaged. And they had huge trading networks. I mean, when I say huge, I don't mean, well, yeah, actually they were in Canada. I mean, they had massive operations inside Russia.
Really?
Yes. I saw a map that showed the spread of the Vikings, and they were traders. First, conquerors second. And they had just, I mean, you think, well, okay, Norway and Finland, they're all kind of close. No, these guys were all the way down into like Moscow with trading centers. They weren't waging war on the Russians in Moscow. They were holding trade with them.
Wow, I had no idea.
Well, neither did I until like a year ago, so don't feel bad. But
I want to be a Viking. Well, I don't want to be. I want to be the person that is buried dead on the ship and burned, not the other guy.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the virgin sacrifice.
Yeah, the hot chick who has to get torched. I wish I could remember where I read that, because it was, I mean, they had, for whatever time period it was, they had a really elaborate thing set up for the funeral pyre. They, like there was even, it wasn't glass, but it was like mica. It was, some kind of stone that was a glass-like substance as the window in which people could see the dead guy who was stuck in it, was tied to a chair. And, the whole thing with the slave girl who was married to him and all that. And it was fascinatingly horrific is the best way to describe it.
I'm still amazed that our ancestors did such terrible things. That we burn people alive to stuff. Or like cut out the hearts of millions of people to sacrifice to dark gods. Like that's... And I'm still kind of amazed.
Yeah. And according to Steven Pinker, we've only gotten less violent. So as bad as things are today, they were thousands of times worse even just a few hundred years ago.
That is a very good point, actually. Yeah, I won't... You're right. I'm not being sacrificed to dark gods or burned alive on a pyre. So I should complain a little less, maybe?
Something like that.
How dare I not be grateful?
Yeah.
Maybe it's a little early. Maybe the time is not quite yet. But those other worlds, promising untold opportunities, beckon. Silently, they orbit the sun, waiting.
This one is really exciting for me, although I don't have a dog or a cat, I have a dog. But we are going to talk about the secret history of the first cat in space. Dum, dum, dum. On October 18th, 1963, the Center of National Studies in France was sent to send a small cat named Felix into space. After lagging behind its Soviet and American competitors, France was eager to stake its claim in the space race with cats for some reason. But on launch day, the mischievous little beast went missing, and an accidental heroine stepped in to take his place. Her name was Félicité. From the streets of Paris, this tuxedo kitty, nicknamed Astro Cat, would reach heights never achieved by feline kind. On October 24th, 1963, she was jettisoned into space 130 miles above Earth on a liquid-fueled French Veronique AG-1 rocket soaring high above the Algerian Sahara Desert. She returned just 15 minutes later, already a decorated heroine for her nation. After her landing, French scientists at the Education Center of Aviation and Medical Research studied her brainwaves to see if she had changed at all since her voyage. While not much is known about their findings or about her eventual fate, the CERMA said she had made a valuable contribution to research. That's amazing. I want a cat and I want to shoot it into space. I mean that with love, not for any vicious purposes. I just want a kitty and shoot it into space. In fact, I'll even send my dog. I feel like it's only fair and they would need a buddy.
Well, the fascinating thing is the first animal sent into space was a dog, Latka, by the Russians.
I thought it was a rat.
No.
Okay, the first one was a dog.
And they made no provisions to rescue her. So she died. Whereas when the U.S. and the French sent animals up into space, we worked out ways to rescue them. And I like the story because, not only is it a cat, but it was a tuxedo. So, that's what Houdini was.
Oh, he was. Oh,
Yeah.
honey.
Yeah, but,
Virtual hug.
yeah, thank you. I still miss the little guy. I mean, he's the only cat I've ever had who thought I was a cat.
Oh.
Which is, the cat.
Tucker, I didn't realize you were that hairy.
You're funny. Well, I'm my ancestry. I'm certainly sort of a little hairier than a lot of people. Not as bad as some the Italian people of Italian descent, but I have been called a hobbit in my day.
That's adorable. Oh, can I pet you when we finally meet?
Yes.
Okay.
But there's actually some parallels between that cat and Latka, because basically the Soviets were panicked. They had to figure out a way how to send, they wanted to make sure they stayed ahead of the U.S. in the space race. And so they were desperate to send an animal, a living thing into space. And Latka was a dog they just grabbed off the street. She was a stray. And they, put her up in Sputnik 2, I think it was. And, they wired her up so they could monitor her, but they didn't have any plans to get her down. So, she died when she ran out of oxygen, and then eventually the capsule, or whatever the thing you would call that she was in, it burned up in the atmosphere. But whereas when the U.S. sent monkeys into space, we said, we've got to bring them back. When the French sent a cat into space, they said, we've got to bring her back.
Well, the Russians are a special breed of people. I feel like as a country, they all need a hug.
Yeah. If you've ever read Russian realism, hugs are something they definitely need.
Yeah, the country as a whole needs a hug.
Yeah.
That was the most offensive science report I've ever heard. How could you do such a thing?
Beavis helped me.
Claim made for hydrogen wonder material. Scientists in the U.S. say they have at last managed to turn hydrogen into a state where it behaves like a metal. If that is true, and it is a controversial claim, it fulfills a more than 80-year quest to produce what many have said would be a wonder material. Theory suggests metallic hydrogen could be used to make zero resistance electrical wiring and super powerful rocket fuel, among many applications. Ranga Diaz and Isaac Silveira are the Harvard researchers behind the work. They report their experiments in this week's Science magazine. It is the first time solid metallic hydrogen has ever existed on Earth. Professor Silveira told the BBC the pair say the quantity of metallic hydrogen created so far is tiny, an amount less than the cross-section of a human hair, but in time they believe ways could be found to boost its production. Now, how they did this was they did what's called an anvil press, and they had synthetic diamonds on the upper and lower jaws of the press, and they used those to compress hydrogen to basically what you would find deep, deep, deep in the depths of Jupiter. Those levels of pressure. And anybody needing an idea of the scale of Jupiter, the great red spot on Jupiter is twice the size of the planet Earth.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we're so tiny.
Yeah, we are insignificant. And one of the things that people are hoping to find out if it's true or not, assuming this process works and it can be scaled up, is what happens to metallic hydrogen when you release the pressure on it. It is thought that because of the weird characteristics of hydrogen, and if you have not read Isaac Asimov's The Left Hand of the Electron, I recommend you do so because he's got a chapter in there discussing the weird things dealing with hydrogen. But it's thought that if you compress hydrogen to the point where it becomes metallic, once you release that pressure, it will stay metallic. If that is true, then it opens up vast possibilities, assuming we can figure out how to mass produce this stuff. We're talking super fast computer chips, the kind that are so fast we could never hope to better their speed, superconducting wiring, all kinds of things.
I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's it. There's the article talks about all kinds of really disputes between people who are experts in the field as to whether or not this is actually legit. I'm too stupid to know who's right. But if it works out, even if the process that they developed can't be used for mass production, the fact that it proves that, when you take the pressure off metallic hydrogen, it stays metallic, that is enough incentive for people to start pouring billions of dollars into researching a way of mass producing it. And then, the universe becomes our oyster.
I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited, Tucker. I mean, I'll probably be dead before this is actually mass produced and beneficial to me personally, but I'm still really excited.
You never know.
Ancient, scary, and alien-looking specimen forms a rarity in the insect world, a new order. Researchers at Oregon State University have discovered a 100-million-year-old insect preserved in amber with a triangular head, almost alien and ET-like appearance, and features so unusual that it has been placed in its own scientific order, an incredibly rare event. There are about 1 million described species of insects and millions more still to be discovered, but every species of insect on Earth has been placed in only 31 existing orders. Now there's one more. The findings have been published in the Journal of Crustaceous Research and describe the small, wingless female insect that probably lived in fissures in the barks of trees, looking for mites, worms, or fungi to feed on while dinosaurs lumbered nearby. It was tiny but scary looking. This insect has a number of features that don't match those of any other insect species that I know, said George Poignier Jr., a professor of entomology at OSU College of Science, and one of the world's leading experts on plants and animal life forms. I have never really seen anything like it. It appears to be unique in the insect world, and after considerable discussion, we decided that it has to take place in its own new order. That's amazing. Can you imagine being the, person that discovered that?
Oh. I mean, it looks like a cross, to me, between a praying mantis and an ant. You know, it's got the head of a praying mantis and basically the body of an ant. But, and I really wish they would crack that amber open to see if they could get the DNA.
I want to know, though, wait, how do they know it's female then?
There could be
for sure
physical characteristics about its body that are common to insects that would indicate it was female. But of course,
we are not extracting DNA. We are not doing that, Tucker. We've seen the movie. There are 3 of them. All of them are horrible.
There are 4, and in one of them, a lawyer gets eaten. I'm telling you, eating lawyers is not a bad thing.
I know. I used to believe that in the same way that I used to believe you can't punch Nazis. But now I have some lawyer friends. And I would be sad if they were eaten by dinosaurs. I'm sure they have compatriots they would be happy to have eaten. So maybe we'll talk to them about which lawyers can be sacrificed.
Okay, let me ask you a question. How about if the dinosaurs ate lawyers as the lawyers were punching Nazis and ate the Nazis at the same time?
I'm okay with that. I would miss my friends, but I would be okay with that.
I think we found a compromise.
Yes. I'll have to let my friends know that they are now dinosaur food.
Flying Cretaceous monster ate dinosaurs for breakfast. It has been said that the pterosaur, which can only be described as a bird, reptile, dinosaur-esque thing, was the largest flying animal. This giant beast, which roamed the Earth during the Cretaceous period, roughly 66.5 million years ago, was a reptile but not actually a dinosaur. Despite being winged, it wasn't a bird either. The pterosaur basically looked like a platypus on bath salts. For obvious reasons, scientists have had a difficult time figuring out how to classify the pterosaur. While pterosaur bones have been found many times before, a lack of firm evidence has kept the hideous beast's lineage shrouded in mystery. But recently, 2 researchers from the UK found a remarkable pair of azurdarchid pterosaur fossils in the Transylvania, of course, region of Romania that could bring paleontologists one step closer to figuring this shit out. In their study, published in the journal Peer J, Darren Naish and Mark P. Witten describe how the pterosaur fossils they found from a creature they nicknamed, really? That's a nickname? Hatzigopteryx?
Wait, that's... Oh. Huh. Okay.
No, a nickname would be like Hattie. Not Hatzigopteryx. That sounds like an uncomfortable sex position somebody in a Slavic country wants to force you to endure against your will. Diverge from our conventional understanding of pterosaur proportions. Typically, azurdarchid pterosaurs, the largest of the pterosaurs, are thought to have had unusually long necks, which they presumably craned down to reach for fish. And I have all kinds of weirdness with this article because I've never known what the difference between a pterosaur and a pteranodon is, other than I seem to recall that pterosaurs were fuzzy and pteranodons were bald. However, the illustration that goes along with this article has a thing that actually does look like a winged duck-billed platypus, which is kind of freaking weird looking.
This thing looks horrifying.
Yeah, Ooh, they changed the picture. Because the original picture I saw was different. That's bizarre. That's even more horrifying than the picture that they had. Now I gotta... There was another article I had that I didn't use because it was the same story. And let me see if I can find that one, because that one had... They both have the same picture, and that's different than this one, which is still freaky and is like your freaking... that crane that you call a dinosaur, which is pretty much a dinosaur.
Oh, the
shoebill.
The shoebill crane.
Yeah.
That is a literal nightmare. It is terrifying. I watched a video where the mother pushed the baby out of the nest because its older sibling had basically been kicking its ass, so it was too afraid to get food and water from its mom, and it was slowly starving to death. And Mama one day heard it crying about like getting its ass kicked, and she just very slowly blinked at it, and then she stepped right over it and started feeding its brother.
Yeah.
And I thought, holy shit, these things are literal dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's birds are like that. They're
no empathy whatsoever, Tucker. No empathy for its own baby.
Yeah. What was there? Like the March of the Penguins. Apparently, they like edited it out that that the penguins they have 2 eggs and they just really don't fucking care about one of them when it hatches, and they let it die. So all those cute little penguins, yeah, they kill half their chicks. Or
animals. I mean, we're all excited about how cute and fuzzy animals are. I was at the park the other day screaming my head off like a lunatic. Consent at ducks. I just kept screaming, consent, because they were basically trying to rape this female. They want to mate. There are like 7 dudes on this one female. And I'm like, well, I'm not touching them because I'm not getting bitten. And obviously they don't understand. But this is the most horrifying situation I've basically just got to watch or run away from. But you can hear her like losing her shit because she wants them to go away.
Well, did you know that female ducks have basically
spiral vaginas?
Well,
yeah.
They have 2.
What?
Yeah, basically they have, if they like the guy that's raping them, they let his sperm go to their uterus and fertilize their eggs. Although it's not really a uterus because they don't incubate them. And if they don't like the guy, they shun it off to the side and he doesn't fertilize their eggs.
That is crazy.
But, yeah, I'm assuming you've heard of the Ig Nobel Prize?
Yes, I have.
Okay, one of the guys who won an Ig Nobel Prize won it because he wrote a paper on homosexual necrophilia in mallard ducks.
Wasn't that on someone's podcast?
Probably was, because I know that Science Friday, they annually broadcast the award ceremony for the Ig Nobel Prize, and they do a podcast. So.
Oh my gosh, I need to... They also televise... Is it that one, or is it... Somebody televises their bad award show, and I need to watch it the next year.
I don't know. The Ig Nobel Prize might have started doing that. I don't know. The Razzies may do it as well, which are bad movies.
Maybe that's what it is.
But, in Sweden, the Nobel Prizes are a bigger deal there than the Oscars are here.
Yeah, I could see that.
And it's like, wow, I wish I lived in a country where smart people were honored. And it was a big, week-long party event. But
Tucker, we could get there. We could eventually get there. Although right now, we're having to have protests at airports.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And we're we're just dreading the day when they announce the camps.
I'll be sad. Tucker, if they bring back slavery, will you keep me?
Abso-smurfly.
Thank you.
Of course, if they bring back slavery, I'll probably be a slave too, because I'm so poor.
Ooh, that would be bad.
Yeah. We'll find somebody rich to keep us.
Yes, we need to make rich friends.
Don't be the boy. Don't be the boy.
No!
Tennessee senator wants porn to be recognized as a public health crisis. A Tennessee senator wants pornography to be recognized as a public health crisis. Mount Juliet Republican May Beavers, holy shit, her last name is Beavers.
Yes.
May Beavers says she's pushing for the resolution after getting calls from a group in Memphis studying what they call a hypersexualization in teens and kids. The resolution says pornography treats women and children as objects. What fucking pornography are you watching with kids in it?
Yeah.
Sensationalizes rape culture and sex trafficking and makes men less interested in getting married. Beavers is pushing for education, prevention, and research to tackle what she calls an epidemic damaging families. Now, I am all for pornography. I will kind of agree that I think pornography currently treats women as objects and it sensationalizes rape culture and sex trafficking. Yes, I'm kind of there with her, kind of. But it is in no means a epidemic and public health crisis. She's mad because she caught her husband masturbating one day because he didn't want to try and come in her old wrinkly pussy anymore. So I don't know what to tell her about that one.
Yeah. I wish I could remember all the crazy shit that she's been involved in, but clearly she has been traumatized by having the last name of Beavers because she's always been into some weird shit. And as a matter of fact, it turns out that a lot of the really horrific, abusive porn that is out there on the internet isn't terribly popular.
Good.
I mean, there's like 5 guys who watch the same shit, 8 billion times, so it has a lot of views. But it's not popular among lots of people. Of course, the countries that have the most restrictive porn laws, Saudi Arabia, also don't really value women as human beings. That always has to be pointed out.
Right. I don't understand why people hate women so much. We are goddamn amazing.
Well, and it's like, I really, I have seen some rather unpleasant kinds of porn, and it's like, how could anyone find this enjoyable? And I don't mean like, oh, it's bondage. No, there is apparently a subset of porn that I didn't realize existed until I made the mistake of searching on Brazilian, because I thought that would give me, good-looking women from Brazil. But
right.
Apparently it means women vomiting on one another.
What? Tucker, what? Tucker, yeah. What the hell are you watching in your spare time?
Well, I didn't watch a lot of that, I'll tell you this much. It was enough to discover that, they're sticking their hands, literally their hands, down their throat and barfing on one another. That's not something I want to see. I don't care if they are having hot lesbian sex. The fact that vomit's involved just turns me off.
Vice did an article, and it could be total bullshit. I was unwilling to fucking Google it, about a porn called like Stomping or something, where basically women in high heels, women and or children in high heels, crush small animals to death.
Yeah, that's been a thing. That's been a thing for a while, but this
what?
Yeah, I can remember back before the internet reading about that. But it's one of those things where it's, you've got like a handful of people who are interested in that, and they're willing to pay big money for it so it gets attention. Whereas, you're not going to pay big money to see lesbian porn because it's everywhere. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Of course, the states that view porn the most are all your good redneck Christian states that just happen to be part of the Confederacy. Right.
I wish they would just let people masturbate. Life would be so much easier.
I know. And, obviously, if people can get off, they're happy.
Yes, just let people masturbate. Jesus.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Democracy simply doesn't work.
And this next story, really, we don't need to go much beyond the headlines. And that's kind of why I put it in here, because the headline is so awesome. Segway driving Nazi who dresses as a druid and carries a tribal spear is arrested on suspicion of plotting attacks on Muslims and Jews.
Well, I feel like that is a perfectly good reason to arrest someone.
Yeah. I mean, you look at this guy and you're like, okay, I can see why you'd want to arrest him because he's obviously a threat. But, he's not, he's going to stab a couple of people and then everybody's going to get the hell out of his way.
Well, it says later in the article that he was arrested with another person and they seized multiple weapons and quantities of ammunition and explosives.
Yeah, that is really disturbing.
So, homeboy was crazy.
Really, like the druid costume in the Segway didn't give it away before this.
I mean, good point.
But that's, I loved, the picture with the article, because it's just so funny. It's like, wow, yeah, I'm going to follow this guy. He's clearly sane. Said nobody ever.
Where do you even get a Segway now? Segways were cool in 2011. Segways actually were never cool, but Segways were like the thing in 2010 and 2011. Where do you even get a Segway now?
I don't know.
Who invested that much money? You could buy a scooter.
You could buy a used car for that.
Yeah, you could, but he bought a Segway.
The one thing there's actually two things cool about Segways, which most people don't know. The first is that Dean Kamen, who invented the Segway, did it because he wanted to drive down the cost of these wheelchairs that he was building for handicapped people. I mean, these are wheelchairs that can do all kinds of fancy things like go upstairs and, raise the person up to eye level with somebody who's, normal. And they have all kinds of capabilities, but because the market is so small, the costs were pretty high. And he figured out that by making the Segway, he could cut the cost of the electronics and stuff involved in the Segway, so he would make the wheelchairs cheaper.
That's really cool. I had no idea.
Yeah, and the other thing is that although there is a dark side to the technology, the drones that everybody buys for dirt cheap that more or less fly themselves.
Right.
Those use the same electronics and software that the Segway uses.
I definitely didn't know that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can give, you can say, well, Segways are stupid, et cetera, but, it was just like, let's sell a few of these so we can make the the wheelchair's cheaper, and that just kind of makes it all cool. And the fact that, it enabled drones is also really cool, even if drones can be used for some really ugly things.
Right.
Okay. You want the next story?
I do. Report, Trump using executive orders prepared for Romney in 2012. The Trump White House is allegedly using more than 4 dozen executive orders that were prepared for former Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney if he had won the election. How bitter are these assholes that they wrote up, 4 dozen, 40, 48, almost 50 executive orders?
Something like that.
5 years ago, and they've just been holding on to them in their fucking diaries? God damn these sons of bitches. Former Utah Governor Mike Leavitt, Republican, told BuzzFeed that the potential orders were prepared during the 2012 campaign as part of the transition planning process and were never actually reviewed by Romney himself. So the Republicans were more prepared in 2012 than they are now. As one listed example, an order prepared for a potential Romney presidency was titled Minimizing the Economic Burden of Obamacare Pending Repeal. Trump on Monday signed an order with nearly the exact same title. That executive order, however, was an updated version of the one that was to be considered by Romney, which called for the prompt and complete repeal of Obamacare. Trump's order, on the other hand, called only for a prompt repeal, leaving room for parts of former President Obama's landmark healthcare law to remain in place. Another document ordering a potential review of banned U.S. interrogation techniques and the CIA's use of black site prisons overseas was also among the executive orders prepared for Romney, according to BuzzFeed. Trump's first day in office had been marked by a swift series of executive orders ranging from crackdown on illegal immigration to the reinstatement of a bygone policy banning funding to nonprofits that perform and discuss abortions abroad. This is from this article was from The Hill. I can't believe our country has been we could have had these problems back in 2012.
Well, some of them I think we would have had. I don't believe that that Mitt would have signed the torture memo. I think he had a little better integrity than that. I could be wrong, but I think Mitt had, he was a halfway decent human being.
Mittens. Oh, Mittens.
Or it's like what somebody said on Wait, Don't Tell Me. It sounds like something they'd ask you at a German restaurant. Do you want that Mitt Romney? But, and there's supposedly, Steve Bannon, a.k.a. the Nazi working for Trump, has been whipping a lot of these executive orders out of his ass. I don't know. I do know that there's just so much shit coming out of the Trump White House in the first week that I don't have time to dig through all of it. I'm sure nobody else does either.
Well, with the ban on Muslims that was stranding people in foreign countries and at airports, what do you do if somebody's in the middle of the air and then land in Chicago? Anyway, there have been so many protests that a federal appeals court has halted the ban temporarily, which has got to be so fucking scary. We have so many doctors right now that are... I can think of 3 that are from one of the countries being banned. And they are incredible scientists. Absolutely incredible scientists.
Well, all the tech companies have told their people who are, from one of those countries, or they said, you get home now, or you don't leave home now. They're right. They are so afraid of this ban, which literally, apparently, within just the last few hours has been suspended by a court judge, so who knows how that'll work out. But they're so worried about losing key people that they're telling, ones, you can't go to these outside the country. I mean, if you are a person who is of Syrian descent and you've got a green card to enable you to work in the U.S., live and work in the U.S., and you're, say, because you have to be like in the States 7 years to apply for citizenship, and say you've been here 6 years and 9 months, and you go to Canada for vacation, you may have trouble getting back into the country.
I don't even think it's trouble. I think they would flat out refuse. There are reports of people having their like passports taken from them, or whatever it is they give you that let you leave the country. They are not letting people on planes, and there are lawyers at airports now having to help people with immigration. This is madness.
Well, supposedly, and this is...
I thought my country was better than this.
Yeah. But supposedly, this comes from somebody, a friend of a friend, so take it with a grain of salt. But apparently, the Homeland Security immigration people literally have no idea what the hell they're supposed to be doing in this situation. So they're just sort of making it up as they go along and hoping they're doing the right thing.
That makes me feel slightly better. Because, again, no one was prepared for... You can't do an immediate ban on stuff like this because, again, we did a ban. Okay, someone's on a flight right now. Well, then what do we do with them once they hit the U.S. shores?
Right. And we're talking about, we're not just talking about somebody who has fled Syria and has bought a plane ticket to the United States. These are people who have lived in the United States for years, possibly even decades. And, because they went outside the U.S. to not even a Muslim country like Syria or Saudi Arabia or wherever, but they went to Canada, England, wherever. And
they went to Italy for winter vacation, and then they're fucked in Italy.
Yeah, because, and
I have to say, if I was a foreign country and you suddenly stranded like 30 people in my country, I would be so pissed off. Because now, what does that country do with these people?
There's a terrible Tom Hanks movie that's based on a true story. I think it's called The Passenger. I don't remember, but it's based on a true story. There was a guy who he wound up he was from somewhere in like the Middle East, and he was in an airport in Paris, and his passport got stolen, and because of the political bullshit, he couldn't go. As I recall it, he'd been living in England for decades, right? But he was originally from the Middle East. He was in Paris because he was flying from somewhere back home. Somebody stole his passport, and because he didn't have any identification, they wouldn't allow him to fly home to England, and he wasn't allowed to leave the airport, and he spent literally 10 years or more inside the airport. Gosh, I can't find it now. Because Tom Hanks's credits on IMDb are so long. But yeah, and they did a terrible movie based on that guy's life that had Tom Hanks in it playing the guy. But yeah, no, The Terminal, that was the name of the movie, which is based on the true story of some guy, and I don't remember who. But that happened. Some guy got stuck in. It's the movie's inspired by the story of Mirhan Nasiri, an Iranian refugee. In 1988, he landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport near Paris after being denied entry in England because his passport and United Nations refugee certificate had been stolen. French authorities would not let him leave the airport. He remained in Terminal 1, a stateless person with nowhere else to go. He's still living in the... in about 10 years ago, he was hospitalized, and that's the last they've got on him. But yeah, he went batshit crazy because he'd been living in the terminal for, 88 to 2006. So that's 18 years, almost 20.
How is that even possible? How do you let him live in a terminal?
Well, it's because they don't see him as a person.
That's
how it
I hate life and everything in it.
And speaking of these kinds of things, the next story is Trump's immigration ban excludes countries with business ties. President Trump has signed an executive order that bans citizens from 7 Muslim-majority countries in the Middle East from entering in the United States for 90 days. Of course, the countries not banned include Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Fun fact, the hijackers who flew planes into buildings on 9/11 were from Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Other countries where people are allowed to come from in that part of the world are Egypt and Turkey and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan, Turkey are all under questionable leadership, to say the least, and Egypt's attempts at democracy in the wake of getting rid of Mubarak aren't exactly stellar. But hey, that's, nobody cares because, he just banned them towel heads from getting here. Which it's a bullshit ban because, blanket banning people is not the way we do things in America, I thought.
I thought we were a country of immigrants. I thought we celebrated the diversity and the hardships that our ancestors went through and had to go through to get here that made this nation fucking amazing. But at some point, that stopped being a good thing. Why?
Yeah. I don't understand. Well, I do, but it's, it's dick waving. It's, I'm going to slap my dick against these people's faces because I can. It's not valid policy, and that is absolutely the wrong thing for this country, but there you have it. That's where we are. And it's only going to get worse.
And so now we end the story with the worst story of 2017. Woman at center of Emmett Till case tells author she fabricated testimony. So if you do not know who Emmett Till was a 14-year-old boy who was visiting some relatives in Chicago.
No, he was from Chicago and visiting.
He was from Chicago and going to Mississippi?
Yes.
Okay. So he's from Chicago visiting relatives in Mississippi. And And according to the story at the time, he wolf whistled at a white woman. 3 days later, he was found in the Tallahatchie River. He had a bullet hole in his head and an eye gouged out along with other wounds. The murderers wrapped barbed wire around his neck and weighed him down with a cotton gin fan. The mother of Emmett Till decided to have an open casket. And news reports from all over the place came and were there. The country, I guess, mourned for this woman, those that had empathy. And at the center of this case is a woman who disappeared off the map. It was her husband and brother-in-law, or her husband and brother-in-law, who basically got this boy, beat and killed him. And in her witness testimony, I guess she lied about it all. And she's been hidden for a while, but an author found her back in the early 2000s, 2005, 2006, something like that. Found her. And I guess got her to admit her story. And she said she made most of her testimony up. So, and then she also, I read in another article, not this one, but she said that it sort of ruined her life, that she's had to stay in hiding. And that has to show you how this doesn't matter to her at all. We've all told lies. We have all told little lies. We have all told really fucking big lies. Never in my life have I told a lie that ended someone's life. And I've told some pretty horrible lies. I have never ended someone's life through my own action, or through my words, and I cannot imagine ending someone's life and only thinking of how it affected you because you have had to go into hiding. This woman is a monster, and she is alive. She's in like her early 70s or some shit. And I hate her. I hate that she got to live a long life, whether it was happy or not. She's still fucking alive. I hate her so much. Yeah. And her family will never know. Her ancestors will never know. She will die. And without this story having been revealed, this would have died with her. And there's nothing we can do about that.
It's the story, has all kinds of weird contradictions to it as far as, what happened that caused them to murder Emmett Till. I've heard, different accounts that, well, she was walking down the street and he whistled at her. I've heard that, she was at a gas station. I've heard she was at a grocery store. And one of the stories I heard was that it was obvious to people that it was a white guy who whistled at her, but because they couldn't blame the white guy, they picked on the black kid. I don't know, but, even if he were guilty of the things that he had been accused of, murdering him is not justifiable under any circumstances. And how she could, live with herself for all these years and, knowing that, I did something that caused my husband and my brother-in-law or whatever to murder somebody and not come forward until relatively recently is beyond me.
That is... I can't even imagine having so little regard for another human life. I can't... Racism on this level is something I can't understand. I cannot wrap my head around it. I knew a girl that she, in high school, I think she smarted off first, but anyway, she got her ass kicked a couple days in a row by a group of black girls. And so then she decided that all black people were mean and violent, right? That I can understand. That you had a trauma, you associate it with the person. I can understand how your racism develops like that. I cannot understand how a lie you tell ends someone's life and you can only think of how it has ruined your life.
Yeah. I mean, Emmett's mother, she suffered a horrible emotional thing because I know it was hugely controversial for her not to have his body cosmetically repaired because
right, or have a closed casket.
Yeah, well the funeral home says we can make him look normal. And she said, no, I want him to look as he looks.
Yeah.
So, like you said, to have a closed casket. She wanted people to see that. And I know that there were, people saying, well, that's, it's terrible that what happened, but she should, not make people be forced to see such things. But, if they hadn't seen it, maybe we wouldn't have gotten things
right
to change. But yeah, I hate that this story confirms the worst things that I had initially believed about it, because I thought that there was, some bullshit involved, but now it looks like the whole thing is bullshit, which is even worse. Like I said, I'd heard that, it was somebody had whistled at her and she blamed Emmett, which is wrong, but now it looks like that he may not have even done that, and apparently she made up testimony for court when she was defending her husband and her brother-in-law, which, your outrage hits the limit, and it's like, I can't go anymore, because if I do, I'm just going to start killing people.
Right.
So, but, and that's, like I said before, we could do 3 hours on Trump and not cover everything, but I wanted to make sure we got to this story because it's just, it's so horrific, and I have a feeling we're going to be hearing more of them, more like it in the future. Unfortunately, it won't be people confessing that they made something up. It'll be some poor innocent kid getting murdered just because of the color of their skin.
I thought we were getting better, Tucker. I thought when I could have discussions about racism and sexism within the United States that, we were getting better. And I think maybe we are, and we just had too much too fast, and it was too much for people. I mean, in the last 4 years to start talking about trans rights and rape culture and open racism. And again, this country is overwhelmingly white. we are still, despite being, you know, more diverse than other places, overwhelmingly we are still a white Christian majority country. And I think we hit too much too fast, and it makes people really fucking uncomfortable. It's 2017 and we've had two men on women's makeup advertisements. 2. And we are less than a month into 2017. That is incredible progress, because it never even occurred to me, myself, 4 years ago, that there were any dudes that fucking wore makeup.
Really?
And, yeah. I mean, other than, you know, like drag queens, but now I know straight men. Or non-drag queens who are men who just wear makeup. Yeah. And that things like that had never occurred to me and would have been foreign to me 4 years ago.
It's actually been a thing for decades now, because I can remember people talking about it in the late 80s. You know, and in those cases, it was, you know, vain guys who were in their 40s or later who, you know, didn't want to admit that they were getting older, so they were using women's makeup and cosmetics to hide their age. And now you're starting to see, I guess it would have started with the goths, you know, where you'd have guys, you know, like Robert Smith from The Cure, who would wear eyeliner, and you started to see more guys doing that, just, you know, as a fashion statement, not because they were old fuckers trying to pretend they were, you know, young dudes. But, right. But now you're starting to see, you know, people of, you know, all ages who are men wearing makeup. And, I mean, speaking as an old fart, it's like, well, yeah, whatever. If they want to do it, that's fine. I don't care. It's not something I would do, just because it's not something I would do. But, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But, you know, part of the problem I think we had was, as a country, is so many of us were just like, oh, who the fuck could be so stupid as to vote for Donald Trump?
Right. Yeah.
And you know, the problem you have whenever an outside group gets into power, regardless of whatever their background is or anything like that, is there's a tendency of, you know, people in that group, not necessarily the leaders, to go hog wild. And when Obama was elected, he clamped down on, you know, the people who were like, oh, well, Obama's going to give us socialized medicine. Obama's going to do all this stuff that they thought was wonderful. You know, he clamped down on their expectations and said, I'm going to do what I can, but I'm not necessarily going to give you what you want. Whereas Donald Trump is not clamping down on the expectations of the right-wingers. He's going, oh, executive action to build a wall? Yeah, I'll sign that. Executive order to ban birth control money in foreign countries? Yeah, I'll sign that. So he's encouraging them, which is a bad thing.
Yes, and I don't think I hope nobody votes for a president and thinks they're going to get absolutely everything line item earmarked. I assume when I vote for a candidate, my candidate is going to do what is best for the greatest number of people. And so it never occurs to me that, I think that's another reason I didn't expect all this craziness to happen. Building a wall, repealing Obamacare, getting rid of abortion, and banning Muslims are huge things to do they're horrible things, but they're really big things. And he's tried to tackle all of those in the first week.
Yeah. Because, the people, I mean, he doesn't care. He just signs whatever they tell him to sign because he thinks it'll make him popular. But the people behind him know that this is their last shot. So if they're going to be able to maintain control over everything, then they've got to ram it all through now, because they know that once they're out of power, it's all going to fall apart. And what concerns me, and this didn't hit me until just fairly recently, I mean, like since Trump was sworn in, is what happens in 2020 or in 2024. Let's say Trump when he runs in 2020, he's defeated in the election. Will he accept the election? I don't know if he will. He's already, launching an investigation to prove that millions of people who voted in the election were illegal voters, even though that's clearly not the case. So, if he loses by tens of millions of votes in 2020, is he going to say, well, okay, I guess I'll go? Or is he going to say, no, it was fraud and I'm not leaving? And then, but let's say hypothetically, Sagan forfend, that he manages to win re-election in 2020. In 2024, he comes up against, the constitutional limit of running for office. Will he respect that? I don't know if he will. And that has me worried.
Like he said during, was it the second debate or the first debate, where he said, depending on the outcome, he would or wouldn't accept it?
That was pretty much all of them.
Okay, yeah. I was surprised that he would say that. And I wonder if he's creating, how to put this? Like, if he's starting to believe his own lies. If it's like what they say about, who's the big action star that's in that stupid, it's not 007. John Cruise? Tom Cruise.
Yes.
It's like what they say about Tom Cruise.
That he's gay?
Not that he's gay, that because he's in Scientology, that he sort of creates his own reality.
Oh yeah, definitely that is the case with Trump.
Right. And so I'm wondering if he's going ahead with these things, because he's said it over and over, and he's like, well, obviously that happened. Obviously I saw that.
Yeah. No, that would not surprise me. I mean, so apparently, again, we don't know this for any certainty, so we can't say it's true, but he's apparently ordered photographs of the massive crowds at his inauguration posted all over the White House, and because they know that he wants to see big, huge crowds, they're posting photos of the women's march that happened the day after. Rather than the actual photos of his inauguration, which weren't that big. And, if anybody other than Hillary had won the election, let's say that, it had been Hillary versus Ted Cruz, okay? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't have had huge crowds in D.C. simply because it wasn't as historic as it would have been when you had Hillary elected. Just like when, Obama had huge crowds because it was a historic event. He was the first African-American elected president of the United States. So, of course, he's going to draw huge crowds. Because even people who didn't vote for him would want to be there because they're going to be there as part of history.
Right.
And, Trump is you could put him like, sort of a middling, sort of like Bush beating Dukakis. Just sort of a middling guy beating a middling guy. So they're not going to have a huge crowd. But of course, Trump isn't a middling guy. He's Cheeto Mussolini.
That man is... I kind of want to see a life story about Trump. And more, I want to see who raised him and how he was raised. Because I cannot imagine the series of events. Because there are other rich people. Like, his daughter's incredibly wealthy because obviously she's the daughter of a billionaire. Maybe it's because I'm sure he physically assaults all the women in his life, that she's probably a more rational individual. But I would like to see what caused him to be such a complete fucking dickhead.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter. @TParkAtheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.